Something very strange is happening in the UK housing market right now, and I need to talk to you about it, because what I'm about to share with you could genuinely change how you think about property, money, and the future of this country. Before I dive in, if you find this valuable, please hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. I promise you the information I'm about to share is something the mainstream media will not tell you. And by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why. Last month, something happened that made me sit up and take notice. Rightmove, the biggest property website in the UK, quietly removed over 40,000 listings from their platform. Now here is the thing, these properties were not sold. They were simply removed because they had been sitting there for so long that it was starting to make the market look bad. Think about that for a second. The biggest property platform in the country is now hiding listings because the truth is too ugly to show. Estate agents across the country are being told to stop displaying real selling prices. Banks are sitting on repossession data that they refuse to release to the public. Everyone in the industry is pretending that everything is fine, but I am here to tell you that it is absolutely not fine. I have been watching the UK property market for over 20 years now, and what I am seeing right now is unlike anything I have ever witnessed. The market is not crashing in the dramatic way we saw in 2008. It is not correcting in a normal, healthy way either. Instead, it is freezing. It is like everyone in the entire market is holding their breath, waiting for someone else to blink first. Buyers are waiting, sellers are waiting, banks are waiting. And when someone finally does blink, what happens next is going to make the 2008 financial crisis look like a practice run. I need to be completely straight with you here. About 6 weeks ago, something shifted in the market. The mood changed almost overnight. The smart money, the people who always seem to know what is coming before everyone else, they started moving. Not loudly, not publicly, but quietly and deliberately. Property funds that have held assets for years are suddenly cashing out. Developers who were planning major projects are halting everything. And even the estate agents, the people who could sell ice to someone living in the Arctic, even they are starting to admit that things are getting very strange. Now, they will never say this publicly, because their entire livelihood depends on keeping the illusion alive. But get a few drinks into them at a Friday night gathering, and they will tell you what is really happening behind the scenes. So let me answer the question that everyone keeps asking me. Is the UK heading for a housing collapse? The answer is complicated, because this is not going to play out like previous crashes, where prices simply fell off a cliff overnight. This is different. This is slower, more complex, and potentially far more dangerous than anything we have seen before. Let me break down exactly what is happening out there right now. Here is the problem that nobody in the mainstream media wants to discuss openly. There are 1.4 million households in the UK whose fixed-rate mortgages are ending within the next 12 months. That is 1.4 million families who are about to get a very nasty shock. And there is another million households whose fixes end the year after that. These people locked into their mortgage rates when interest was at 2%, maybe 2.5%. Now they are looking at rates of 7% or higher. Let me do the maths with you so you understand the scale of what is coming. If you have a £300,000 mortgage and you are paying 2% interest, your monthly payment was around £1,100. Your fix ends this year. Your new rate is 7%. Your monthly payment is now £2,100. That is an extra £1,000 every single month for as long as you have that mortgage. Where exactly is that money supposed to come from? Wages have not increased by £1,000 a month. Most people in this country have not had a real pay rise in years when you account for inflation. So what happens to these families? They try to sell their homes. But here is the problem. Everyone else whose fix is ending is also trying to sell at the exact same time. All at once. That is what is starting to happen in the market right now as we speak. If you are finding this information valuable, please take a second to hit that like button. It really helps push this video out to more people who need to hear this, and it costs you nothing. Trust me, sharing this information could genuinely help someone you know avoid a financial disaster. I spoke to a mortgage broker last week who's been in the business for 30 years. He told me he has never seen anything like what's happening now. People are coming into his office desperate to remortgage, normal everyday people with good jobs and clean credit histories, and the computer is simply saying no. These are not risky borrowers. These are teachers, nurses, middle managers, police officers, people who did everything right. They saved their deposits, they bought sensibly, they never missed a payment. But now the affordability calculations simply do not work anymore with the new interest rates. So they are completely trapped. They cannot afford the new payments. They cannot sell because everyone else is trying to sell at the same time. They cannot remortgage because the numbers say they do not earn enough. That is not a market correction. That is a crisis unfolding in real time. For the last 20 years, whenever UK property started to look a bit wobbly, foreign money would rush in to save the day. Russian oligarchs, Chinese investors, Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds, they would all see a dip in UK property prices as a buying opportunity. London property especially was seen as the safest place in the world to park money. That is not happening anymore. The Russians are completely gone thanks to sanctions. The Chinese government has banned its citizens from investing in overseas property. And the Middle Eastern money that used to flow into London, they are looking at the UK now and seeing exactly what everyone else sees, a country that cannot seem to get its act together on anything. I have been tracking international property investment flows very carefully. In 2019, foreign buyers accounted for 30% of all London property purchases over £1 million. Last quarter, that number was 7%. That is not a decline. That is a complete collapse in foreign investment. But it actually gets worse than that. These foreign investors are not just stopping buying. They are actively selling. Quietly, discreetly, but definitely selling. I know of a building in Canary Wharf where 60% of the flats are owned by a Hong Kong investment fund. Every single one of those flats is going on the market next month. All of them, at whatever price they can get. The estate agent handling the sale told me they have been instructed to accept any offer above 60% of the original purchase price. Think about that. They are willing to take a 40% loss just to get out of UK property, because they know that 50% losses are coming. When sophisticated foreign investors are willing to lose 40% just to exit the market, what do they know that regular British homeowners do not? Everyone thought that build to rent would be the saviour of the UK housing market. Big institutional investors building thousands of flats specifically designed to rent out to tenants. Professional landlords, steady rental income. What could possibly go wrong? As it turns out, everything. These companies borrowed billions of pounds at near zero interest rates to build massive developments. The business model was beautifully simple. Build high-quality flats, rent them out at premium prices to young professionals who cannot afford to buy their own homes. Except those young professionals are leaving the cities. They are moving back in with parents. They are leaving the country entirely. I have obtained data from 3 major build-to-rent developments in Manchester. Occupancy is currently sitting at 60%. In Birmingham, it is even worse at just 50%. These buildings need 90% occupancy just to break even on their running costs. The companies behind them are hemorrhaging money every single month. They cannot lower rents because that would be an admission that the entire model is broken. They cannot sell the buildings because who is going to buy a half-empty tower block in this market? So they are just bleeding out month by month, getting closer and closer to collapse. One of these companies, and I cannot name them for legal reasons, is about to default on £800 million in loans. When that happens, and I am telling you it will happen soon, the banks will suddenly own thousands of flats that they cannot rent and cannot sell. That is when things are going to get really interesting in this market. Remember the cladding scandal? That was just a warm-up act. The leasehold scandal is about to detonate like a nuclear bomb in the middle of the UK property market. There are 4 million leasehold properties in the UK right now. Most of the people who own these properties have absolutely no idea what they actually bought. They think they own their flat outright. They do not. They own a lease, which is basically a permission slip to live there for a certain number of years. And those permission slips are rapidly becoming worthless. Ground rents are doubling. Service charges are tripling. Major works bills for tens of thousands of pounds are landing on people's doorsteps with no warning. And here is the real kicker. These people cannot sell even if they wanted to. Nobody wants to buy a leasehold property anymore. The market has finally woken up to what an absolute scam the leasehold system really is. I have seen flats that sold for £400,000 in 2017 now being valued at £150,000. Not because the area has declined, not because the flat has fallen apart, simply because it is leasehold and everyone now understands that leasehold means toxic. Before I continue, I really want to ask you to subscribe to this channel if you have not already. I put hours of research into every single video I make, and your subscription is what allows me to keep doing this work. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, and let us build a community of people who actually understand what is happening in this country. There is a development in Leeds where the freeholder just announced a £50,000 per flat bill for remedial works. The flats themselves are only worth £200,000. The owners cannot pay, they cannot sell. They cannot even walk away because they are personally liable for these charges forever. 4 million properties, all becoming unsellable at the same time. That is not priced into any market prediction that I have seen anywhere. The Bank of England has a massive problem on their hands, and it is essentially unsolvable. They need to keep interest rates high to control inflation. But high interest rates are destroying the housing market. And a destroyed housing market will tank the entire UK economy. They know this. That is why they keep talking about rate cuts that never actually materialise. They are trying to keep hope alive in the market. But here is what they are not telling you. They cannot actually cut rates. Not really, because inflation is not dead. It is just hiding, waiting to come back. The moment they cut rates significantly, inflation roars back stronger than before. They know this, so they are completely stuck. Keep rates high and watch the housing market implode. Cut rates and watch the currency implode. Either way, something is imploding. But there is a third option that they are secretly preparing for behind closed doors. Let the housing market crash, then print money to bail out the banks again, just like they did in 2008. Except this time, the British public will not stand for it. This time, there will be consequences. Here is something that almost nobody talks about. The UK has a demographic problem that makes Japan look positively healthy. Birth rates have collapsed to record lows. Young people are not forming households. They are living with parents well into their 30s. The population is aging rapidly. And here is the thing about old people. They do not buy houses. They sell them. The baby boomer generation, the people who own most of the property in this country, are starting to pass away. That sounds harsh, but it is simply the reality. Over the next decade, millions of properties are going to hit the market as estates are settled and inheritances are divided up. Who exactly is going to buy all these properties? Not their children because they cannot afford the prices even with inheritance tax. Not immigrants because immigration is being restricted. Not investors because they are all running for the exits as fast as they can. Supply is about to absolutely overwhelm demand in a way we have never seen in this country. And that is before we even talk about all the new build properties that are still being completed right now, despite the fact that nobody can afford to buy them. There are currently 600,000 homes under construction in the UK. Every single one of them will complete in the next 2 years, flooding into a market where almost nobody can afford to buy. The developers know this already. That is exactly why they are already offering 40% discounts to bulk buyers, 40% off on brand new properties. That tells you absolutely everything you need to know about where this market is heading. The UK banks are sitting on a powder keg right now. They have £2 trillion in mortgage debt on their books. That is trillion with a T. If property prices fall by just 20%, which they absolutely will, that represents £400 billion in potential losses. The banks say they are prepared. They say they have stress tested for this scenario. They said the exact same things in 2007. And we all know how that turned out. But here is what they are not telling you. Their stress tests all assume a normal, orderly market decline. This is not a normal market. When prices fall normally, some people sell, some people hold on, and the market gradually finds a new balance point. But when everyone needs to sell at once because their fixed rates are ending, because they cannot afford the new payments, because their leasehold property is worthless, that is not a market anymore. That is a stampede for the exits. And in a stampede, prices do not fall 20%. They fall 50 or 60%, whatever it takes to find any buyer willing to put their hand in their pocket. I have seen the internal risk assessments from 2 major UK banks. They are privately preparing for 50% price falls in certain areas of the country. 50%. But they are not telling anyone publicly because saying it out loud would make it happen. It would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The government knows all of this. They see the exact same data that I see. They know what is coming down the track. but they are completely paralyzed because every single solution they could try actually makes things worse. Cut stamp duty. That just brings forward demand from the future, making the eventual crash even worse. Build more houses. That increases supply when there is already too much supply. Restrict foreign buyers. That removes the only people left with actual money to spend. Another Help to Buy scheme. That just creates more debt that cannot be repaid. They have run out of moves. All they can do now is watch it happen and hope it is not as bad as everyone thinks. But hope is not a strategy, and deep down everyone knows it is going to be exactly as bad as we fear. Maybe even worse. The truth that nobody will say out loud is that certain people in power actually want a crash to happen. Not publicly, of course. They would never admit it. But a 30% correction in house prices would make housing affordable again for young people. It would reset the entire market. Sure, it would destroy millions of households financially in the process, but that is apparently a price they are willing to pay. Not their households, obviously. Yours. Every market crash needs a trigger. Something that makes everyone suddenly realise that the game is finally up. In 2008, it was Lehman Brothers collapsing. This time, it could be almost anything. Maybe it will be a major property developer going bankrupt. Maybe it will be a bank finally admitting that their mortgage book has become toxic. Maybe it will just be someone important saying out loud what everyone is already thinking, that UK property is massively overvalued and a major correction is long overdue. When that trigger moment happens, and it will happen soon, the fall is going to be incredibly fast. Not years, months, maybe even weeks. Because in the digital age, panic spreads at the speed of light. One viral video showing empty tower blocks. One leaked internal bank memo. One government minister saying the wrong thing at a press conference. And boom, game over. So let me answer the question one final time. Is the UK heading for a housing collapse? We are not heading for it. We are already in it right now. It is just happening in slow motion, hidden behind creative accounting tricks and desperate denial from everyone with something to lose. The smart money has already left the building. The foreign investors have gone home. The developers know the party is over. Even the estate agents, the most eternally optimistic people on the planet, are starting to crack under the pressure. The only people who do not know what is happening yet are regular homeowners. And they are about to find out the hard way. This is not fear-mongering. This is simple mathematics. When half the country cannot afford their mortgage payments, when foreign money has completely disappeared, when millions of properties become unsellable overnight, when banks are privately preparing for 50% price drops, that is not a correction. That is a collapse. The question is not if it happens. The question is when it happens, how bad it gets, and whether you will be ready when it arrives. Because this time there is no cavalry coming over the hill to save us. No government bailout for ordinary people. No foreign rescue mission. Just reality finally arriving after being delayed for 15 years. And reality does not care about your mortgage. It does not care about your equity. It does not care about your dreams of property wealth. The UK housing market has been defying gravity for far too long. And we all know what happens to things that defy gravity. Eventually, inevitably, they fall. The only question remaining is whether you will be standing underneath when it finally comes crashing down. If this video opened your eyes to what is really happening, please share it with someone you care about. Share it with your family, your friends, anyone who owns property or is thinking about buying. They deserve to know the truth. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join me as we navigate what's about to become the most turbulent period in UK property history.